In this video we're going to take a look at the second machine from tier 2 of the HackTheBox starting point. The next machine is called Oopsie, and you can see this time I've already got it booted up and I've actually run an NMap scan already. So I'm connected to the starting point VPN, as you can see here with the IP address. I've run an NMap scan just with the services, default scripts and all ports, and we found that we have SSH open on 22 and HTTP on 80. Another thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and add to the host file this IP address so that we don't need to remember this every time, because I always end up going and copying and pasting this IP address. So let's just say this is oopsie.hackthebox, save that, and then rather than using the IP address we'll be able to use that host name instead, and it'll resolve to that, which means hopefully it can take a little while. By the way, if you update your host file and then try and enter that address in here, quite often it will take a little while for it to kind of resolve. Sometimes you can just restart the browser or clear your cache and that helps, but you can see that we've now connected. We didn't have to type in that IP address, and we can now go and have a browse around this site, the Megacorp Automotive. You can see here we've got services, about and contacts. They don't actually seem to be doing anything when I click on them. So we'll have another look at this in a second. Let's see what the first question is asking us. So the first question asks us, what kind of tool can intercept web traffic? And the answer to this would be a proxy. So you can use a web proxy. You can basically have your traffic redirected through this proxy, and that allows you to intercept it. So you can modify traffic before it's sent to the server, you can capture traffic before it comes back to the client, etc. If you think about like a man-in-the-middle attack, where you have a man in the middle of your computer and whatever server you're trying to access, that's basically a proxy. They're proxying, your information is being proxied through their system before it reaches the server, which means they could modify the requests that you send into a website, and they could also modify the responses coming back from the website to your system. So let's submit the answer here, proxy. You can see, by the way, I have this FoxyProxy add-on here set up, which you don't need to use this, but if you want to swap between using burp and turning it off, it's a good idea to have this set up, because otherwise you'll need to go into your actual proxy settings and enable it and disable it each time, whereas this allows you to just swap between the options. Let me go and have a look at what the settings are here. So I have one set up for SSH proxy, for port forwarding SSH, and then we have one set up for burp, which is just localhost IP and then port 8080. And as long as that's enabled, then the traffic's going to go through here into BurpSuite, so we can intercept our requests. You can see I've got this off at the moment because it gets a little bit annoying. Let me just show, if I refresh this, we're not actually going to get anything back from the page until we go and say we want to forward the request or drop the request, or we could modify the request and then forward it. I'm just going to turn intercept off just to allow it to do its thing, because I normally prefer just to go into the HTTP history and make any changes that we need to in here, so you can go and kind of flick through the traffic. And rather than intercepting and modifying, if you find a request that you want to modify, I normally just send it to the repeater and then make some changes and modify it as we go. Okay, let's go back and see what the next question is asking us. So we're being asked, what is the path to the directory on the web server that returns a login page? Okay, let's go back to the website then. So we didn't have too much here. We've got our admin@megacorp email address at the bottom. We could view the source and see, is there any links to any login pages in here. We've got email decode. Here we go. CDN, CGI, login script. So we could click on that. That's actually not showing us any code. Let's have a look at this JS. Oh, there's nothing in there either. Okay. Let's go back here, and I'm going to hit F12 here and bring up the developer tools. And we can have a look at our code in here as well. If you prefer not to go into the source code, you can also then modify things quite easily here as well. Got a console. Let's have a look at the debugger and see what we have in here. You can use this pretty print here if the format's not great. I'll modify that. Doesn't look of any interest to us. Ignore that. Okay, let's keep going. Let's see if we've got any cookies here. We don't. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to refresh the page. Let's go back to our BurpSuite here and see what... Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear this, clear history. Then I'm going to refresh the page, and then let's have a look and see what we've got. So we can actually see here we've got the CDN login script, which just shows not modified, but we have the address of this. So let's try and just take a copy of that and add that to our address bar. Go towards that. Okay, nothing showing up with the script.js. Let's just try login. Okay, that's better. That's looking good. So we've got a login form here. We've got an option to log in as a guest. We could try first of all just admin. or admin password, all that sort of stuff. You could try and insert a quote into these to see do we get any errors, or you could just go ahead and try some SQL injection here. You could take a copy of the request that we're sending, this post request, and go and send this to SQLmap as well, just to allow it to do its things, see if there's any blind SQL there. In this case, we're not getting anything from the default credentials. Didn't look like there was an SQL injection from putting in the quote there, so let's go ahead and try and log in as guest. Okay, so we're logged in. We've got an account option here. You can see we've got guest 2233 is our access ID. And you can see up here this is content equals accounts and ID equals 2. Worth bearing in mind. We've got branding. You can see that's the same sort of thing. So it's selecting the content and then the ID. So we could try and modify that. Brand ID 3. Let's try brand ID 1. Brand ID 1 has some data in it. Okay, let's go into clients. See here client 2 and a client at client.HackTheBox. Let's change that to 1. And you can see here this is the first organization then. So we could put this into, we could use burp intruder or something like that to loop through, let's say, from 1 to 1,000 and see what happens. We could try with negative numbers or a 0 to see if there's anything there, any special users. We've got uploads here as well, and this is interesting because if we can upload some files, maybe a PHP file, and get it to execute, we could potentially get a foothold where we've got where we're able to get a reverse shell. So we're not able to access this at the moment. Let's go and have a look and just have a look at our cookies again. You can see we've got a role guest and user 2233. Let me try and change role to admin and reload the page. No use there. Let's go into account. Okay, so there's our account. We're access ID 2233 ID 1. Sorry, ID 2. Let's change the ID to 1. And there we have our admin account with an access ID of 34322. So let's go and update our user value to that value there and try and refresh the page. Still says we're logged in as guest, but if we go to our uploads, you can see we now have access to this upload feature. So this is the point where we want to try and upload our reverse shell or some kind of code to get some code execution. So let's go. You can go to something like this revshells.com, and this is quite good. It'll allow you to go and select what type of shell you want. So you can try different PHP shells here, for example exec, and you can put in your IP address and the port you want it to connect back on, and this will give you the whole code here, and you've got a lot of different options here. You could also go to something like payloads, all the things, and you'll find a lot of different files, a lot of different scripts you can try. What I'm going to do is just go ahead and see what I've got here on the system. I normally have, let's do locate shell.php. I normally just go with this really basic one. I'm going to copy that to the desktop. Let's have a look at it. Shell.php is so simple. It's just going to call system, and then it's going to call system with whatever command we supply as a get parameter. So let's go ahead and try to upload it. Shell.php. Sometimes we might need to, let's see if there's any problems here first of all. Upload, okay, that uploaded fine. If you get any errors here, saying for example images are the only thing allowed, you might want to try and change this to PHP in capital letters, or you could add a JPEG extension in the middle there or something. You could use a null byte as well at the end. Sometimes it won't take that into consideration. You could modify the file signature of the PHP file so it looks like an image. There's a variety of things you can do anyway to try and bypass file upload protections, but in this case it doesn't look like we need to. The only thing is we need to find out where the shell has gone. So in order to execute it, we need to know where it's uploaded to. Now we might be able to kind of guess where it's going to be. We can see here content uploads, which, you know, upload or uploads is normally quite a popular directory to store your uploads in. But just for the sake of it, let's try out another tool. We can use gobuster here to brute force the directories, as we have done in some previous videos. We're going to do that with the directory mode, so we'll do gobuster, dir. We want to supply a URL, so let's take our URL here. This is not recursive, by the way, so if it finds a directory here like admin, it won't look for any directories or files inside of the admin directory, but you can use something like ffuff or dirbuster to do recursive searches. Okay, we want a word list. I'm going to do user share word lists dirb, no, dirbuster. What have we got here? Directory list lowercase medium, and then you can say what extensions you want as well. So we might want to look for PHP extensions, we might want to look for HTML, TXT, etc. I'm going to go ahead, I'll do it with PHP. Let's run through that. We've got images, we've got themes, and here we go, we've got uploads. So it's going to keep going through, finding those directories. What we could do now is cancel that and say, right, well, we want to look for PHP files in uploads. And the reason we might do that is sometimes the file would be renamed, so even though we've uploaded that as shell.php, they might rename it to something else. So let's have a look. Wow, I'm really surprised that this hasn't found anything so far. Let's try and grep shell out of that file. Okay, it is in here, so... Wow, so I left that to complete the whole thing and we didn't get anything back. Which I don't understand because we have shell in that word list and it's adding.php to the end of it. Let's try and create a file here. I'm just going to call this words.txt. I'm just going to put in here shell. Let's try and just run that again, and this time do it with words.txt. No, it doesn't find anything. Alright, let's go to that. Let's go to uploads. It's going to be 301 here because we saw that as well whenever we brute force the directory here. These are all 301, so we can't actually access them. But let's try now shell.php. Was not found. Interesting. Okay, let's try this again. Uploads. Oh, did I need to put in a brand name? Let's try again. Upload. Has been uploaded. Let's try and run gobuster again. Ah, there we go, it found it. Okay, so that's my bad. I didn't see it was actually asking us for a brand name, which is essentially a file name, which is why we wasted so much time. Although I'll speed that up for you so you don't have to wait 10 minutes for it to finish. Okay, so there we go. We've verified that we have shell.php in our uploads folder. Let's go and check it out. And as is expected here, we don't get any output because we need to supply our command as the get parameter, right? So if we go back to our, I don't have the shell open anymore, but if we had a look at that PHP code, I don't have it open anywhere. Okay, well, it was asking us for the command parameter, so we can supply that as a get parameter. We can say ls, for example, and we'll see that we've got a shell there. We could do ls ... and see what we've got in that directory, and we can keep going in that fashion. So we could use that then to go and do one of our reverse shells. Let's go down to our PHP command. Okay, PHP system, so we have this system. I'm actually not going to use that one. I'm going to use the reverse shell that I normally use here, which I'm just going to take a copy of from my notes. Something you could do here as well, if you want to, you could go to BurpSuite. You could go wherever we have our... Oh, let me run that again. Go back to BurpSuite. We've got our get request here. Let's send that to the repeater. And then you can quite easily then modify your commands here and say, who am I? Send. Send. So if that's easier for you than just typing it into the address bar, that's fine as well. What I'm going to do here is paste in this. In fact, I'm going to do that from the address bar so we don't need to worry about the spaces and stuff. I'm going to paste this in here. We also need our IP address, so I need to update this because the one that I have in my notes is not correct. We need to update, well, we don't need to update the port. Let's set up a netcat listener here. nc-lmvp. Oh, sorry, what am I doing? 1337. Okay, so we're listening on port 1337. And then we're going to send this request, and hopefully we're not going to get anything. 10.10.15. Okay. Let me try that through burp. You can go ahead here and do Control and U to URL encode. Hit send. Okay, alright, so there was a problem there with some of the encoding. But that's fine, we've got access now. We can do ls, we can do who am I. The problem is we're not going to be able to tab, we're not going to be able to autocomplete, we're not going to be able to use our directional keys. So we can sort that out now. We can do, let's see if we've got Python 3 and do command import pty. Oh, I can't use backspace. Import pty. I have this in my notes which I could just copy and paste, but just so you can see. So I'm going a bit slower. And then we can use bin bash or bin sh. And now we have a bit more access, but we still can't do autocompletes. If we want to do that, we can hit Control and Z to background the session, and then we do stty raw-echo, and then fg to foreground it. And then now we can say let's export term to be xterm so that we can clear the console. And now we have autocomplete. We can use our directional keys and stuff like that. Okay, so now with our fully interactive shell, we can go and have a look around and see what we've got here. Here's our shell. Let's go back into our web directory. It's always a good idea to have a look around the web directory. Let's have a look at that index.php actually. HTML cat index.php. Because obviously we can view all the source code on the website apart from the PHP code. So there might be something in here. There might be a username or password, something that we can use to escalate our privileges. Don't see anything of interest so far. We'd probably be better off just grepping out what we're looking for. Let's have a look. Let's do cat etc password. See what users we've got here. So we've got MySQL. We've got a Robert user. So we're going to want to try and escalate our privileges to Robert from www.data, and then to root from there. Okay, so let's see what else we got here. That's ls-cdn cgi. That's where we had that login script. And you can see here we've got an admin.php, db.php, index.php, and the script. So that sounds interesting. Let's go into that. And we could say in here then, let's grep pass. You could say -R for recursive, -I for case insensitive, and then we'll just do all. And that's going to go and look through those files. And it's actually found that index.php has this password set as megacorp admin exclamation mark. So let's try and do su robert, enter in that password, and we get authentication failure. We could try su root, although that's probably not going to be much use for us. I'm sure the intended solution is to get into Robert first of all. That doesn't work. Okay, so what else do we have here? That was from admin.php, was it? It's cat admin.php. See, is there anything else interesting? Let's try and cat db.php. And in here we have our MySQL connect. Okay, so it's connecting to the SQL service with the username Robert and this password. So that sounds good, considering it's the same username as we're trying to get access to. So let's su robert. Let's paste in that password. And now we have access to Robert. So we should be able to just go and say cat home robert user.txt, and now we've got our user flag, which we can go and submit. In fact, I haven't actually checked what the questions are for a while. I can't remember what it asked us. What is the path to the directory on the web server? Okay, so we're way past that now. Let me go back and answer some of these questions. Proxy. It was the CDI admin or login. Okay, so submit. What can be modified in Firefox to access the upload page? That was the cookie that we modified. What is the access ID of the admin user? Okay, it was 2233. As you can see, it's being checked there in the admin.php code. Oh, sorry, it wasn't. Let me go back to... In fact, let's just check our cookie. It's 34322. Okay, and then on uploading a file, what directory does it go to? It goes to uploads. I was skipping way ahead of these tasks. And what is the file that contains the password that's shared with Robert user? That was .php. db.php, sorry. And what executable is run with the option group bugtracker? Okay, so now we're on to some new stuff. We've submitted, no, we haven't submitted our user flag. Okay, so we can save that for later. Let me open up Sublime and just paste this in, just so we don't need to grab it again later. We're getting far more into the kind of what you expect to see in a HackTheBox machine as we're going through these boxes, particularly in Tier 2. Okay, so if we go back to our terminal here, let's clear this a bit. Something we could do here is sudo-l is normally the first thing you would try whenever you get access to... Oh, I've forgotten the password though already. Cat db.php, let me take a copy of this as well. And yeah, so we can try and run sudo-l and see has this user got any permissions that it can run as sudo. We'll enter in the password, and sometimes it'll come back with a list of binaries that we can run with sudo without actually needing the sudo password. In this case, it says we can't, there's nothing we can do there. So let's go back and do what it's asking us to do, was to look for group bugtracker. So we can do find, and then basically all from the root directory. The group is bugtracker, and then we can send any errors to dev null. And that comes back with this user bin bugtracker. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Let's try and run it. Provide a bug ID 123, and it tries to run cat root reports 123. Okay, let's go in user bin. Okay, so this actually has a SUID bit set. As you can see here, we have a question: what does this stand for? And this will basically ensure set owner user ID, set owner user ID, which will basically ensure that this program is run as the user who owns it, which is root. So if we're able to trick this in some way to execute some other command, we might be able to get root. I was thinking that with the provide bug ID, it's trying to cat out root reports 123. I wonder if we run /root.txt. Okay, so that actually comes back with our root flag. So okay, that's good. So we didn't actually escalate our privilege to root there, but we were able to read a file owned by root, which in our case is the root flag. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. We could escalate our privileges here as well, though. So we'll have a look at that as well. Let me see what it was asking again. What executable is run with the option group bugtracker to identify all files owned by the bugtracker group? Oh, find. Okay, I'm kind of confused what it was asking me there. Okay, regardless of which user starts running bugtracker, what privileges will it run? And that's root. Okay, so it's owned by root, as we saw there. Owned by root, and it's going to run as root. And that's how it was able to read root.txt. What does SUID stand for? Set owner user ID. All good. What is the name of the executable being called in an insecure manner? That was cat. Okay, so it's calling cat. And then it wants the user and the root flag. So just before we submit those, because I know whenever we submit these it's going to close down the system. So another thing there, we found that this was an SUID binary, but if we wanted to find out what all the SUID binaries on the system were, we could also run find and then give in our root directory, and then we're looking for permissions which have this 4000. We can say as well type is file, and then again just send any errors to dev null. And that will come back with a list of all the binaries which might be of interest. You can see bugtracker is listed here and a few others. Some of these will be benign and some won't. So in our case we've already got this bugtracker, so that's fine. But another thing we could do then in terms of escalating our privileges is to try and modify the path. So we know that this is calling cat, but if it doesn't specify, let me just see, can we use locate cat? Well, it's going to be in probably bin cat. So if they don't specify bin cat as the directory, as the path for the cat binary, if they just say cat, we can modify the path and say that they should look in a directory of our choice before using the current path. So let me actually let's do echo, try and explain this with an example. Okay, there we go. Echo path. So here we have our path at the moment, so it's going to go in this order. It's going to first have a look to see if we call cat, it's going to have a look and see is cat in user local sbin. If not, check user local bin. If not, check user sbin. And it'll keep going through in that fashion. So if we were able to say export path equals, sorry, I don't need the dollar there. Export path equals, and then we'll say temp, and then we'll put in the existing path. So if we do that and then do echo path again, we're going to see that it's going to look in the temp directory first of all for our binary, and then it's going to check these other ones. So now we can go and put in our own custom binary. Let's go to temp. Let's create a file. We'll do vim cat, and in here we could literally just say we want to spawn a shell. We could also put a reverse shell in here or something, add a new reverse shell, and that would be a reverse shell whenever it comes back. Let's do chmod and just make that executable. Clear the terminal, and if we now go back and run this again, user bin bugtracker ID 123, and you can see that we've now got this root shell, and we could just go ahead and cat root.txt, Oh. cd roots ls cat root.txt. Oh, how strange. Let's vim root.txt. And there's our root flag. So let's go ahead and submit our user flag, which we got first of all. And let's grab our root flag. And that's the Oopsie machine complete. And that's going to wrap it up for this video then. So next week we'll go through the next machine, which is vaccine. And after that, I'll need to get a VIP subscription and do these last two as well. So I hope you've enjoyed the video anyway. Any questions or comments, leave them down below. Thanks.